On one side of the rope barrier stood white teenagers. On the other side stood black teenagers. Same music, same excitement, same love for James Brown. But in Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, that rope wasn't just dividing a dance floor, it was dividing humanity. And then James Brown did something that nobody had ever dared to do in the heart of the segregated South. He told security to cut the rope. To understand how radical this moment was, you need to understand Birmingham in 1963. This wasn't just any southern city. It was the most segregated city in America. They called it Bombingham because the Ku Klux Klan had bombed so many black churches and homes. The city's public safety commissioner, Bull Connor, was infamous for turning fire hoses and attack dogs on peaceful protesters. Just 3 months before this concert, 4 little girls had been killed when the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed. In Birmingham, segregation wasn't just a practice, it was the law. Jim Crow laws mandated separate drinking fountains, separate bathrooms, separate schools, separate entrances to buildings, and absolutely positively separate entertainment venues. If a concert hall or theater wanted to allow both black and white audiences, they had to have a physical barrier between them, usually a rope down the center of the venue, sometimes a wooden partition, occasionally even a wall. The punishment for violating these laws was severe. Business owners could lose their licenses, performers could be arrested, and audience members, especially black audience members, could face jail time, violence, or worse. James Brown knew all of this when he booked the Birmingham Municipal Auditorium for September 14, 1963. His manager, Ben Bart, had tried to talk him out of it. "James, Birmingham is too dangerous right now," Bart had said, pacing in their Atlanta office. "The city's a powder keg. That church bombing just happened. The Klan is active. Why risk it?" But James had been adamant. "Ben, that's exactly why we need to go. Those people in Birmingham, black folks especially, they need something to lift them up right now. They need to feel alive. They need music." "And the white folks?" Bart had asked. "You planning to have separate shows?" James had paused, thinking carefully before answering. "We're selling tickets to everyone, Ben. But we'll follow the law. We'll have the barrier. We don't have a choice." The thing is, James Brown had been thinking about this barrier problem for years. Every time he performed in the South, he saw it, mice that rope or wall splitting his audience in half. And it bothered him deeply because music didn't see color. When he was up on that stage singing, pouring his heart out, giving everything he had, the music belonged to everyone. But the law said his black fans had to stay on one side, and his white fans on the other, even though they were all there for the same reason. The Birmingham Municipal Auditorium was a large venue that could hold about 6,000 people. When tickets went on sale, they sold out in 3 days. 3,000 tickets for the colored section on the east side of the hall, 3,000 tickets for the white section on the west side. The venue management installed a thick rope barrier down the exact center of the dance floor, held up by stanchions every 10 feet. On either side of the rope, they positioned security guards whose job was to make sure nobody crossed that line. The day before the concert, Birmingham's chief of police, Jamie Moore, paid a visit to the venue. He walked the length of that rope barrier, checking every stanchion, making sure it was secure. Then he met with the venue manager and delivered a clear message: that rope stays up all night. Anyone crosses it, we shut the whole thing down. Anyone tries to remove it, they're under arrest. We clear? The venue manager nodded nervously and immediately passed that message to James Brown's road manager, who passed it to Ben Bart, who called James. "They're not playing around in Birmingham," Bart told him over the phone. Chief of Police himself came to inspect the rope. "He's threatening to shut it down if anyone crosses." James was quiet for a long moment. "We'll see," he finally said. "We'll see." Bart's voice went up an octave. "James, what does that mean? We need to be clear about this. We follow the law or we don't do the show." "I said we'll see, Ben. Trust me." September 14th. Arrived with perfect late summer weather. By 6 p.m., people were lining up outside the auditorium, two separate lines, of course, leading to two separate entrances. The black line wrapped around the block, full of families, teenagers, young couples, older folks who'd been following James Brown's career since his early days. The white line was shorter, but equally enthusiastic. College kids mostly, young people who loved soul music and didn't care much about their parents' segregationist politics, though they'd never say that out loud in Birmingham. Inside the venue, the rope barrier stood like a monument to division. It ran from the front of the stage all the way to the back of the dance floor, a physical manifestation of a law that said human beings couldn't share the same space based on the color of their skin. James Brown arrived at 7 p.m. through the back entrance. As he walked through the backstage corridors, he could hear the crowd already. That particular sound of 6,000 people getting excited, talking, laughing, ready for something special. He asked one of his crew to take him out to look at the venue before the show started. Standing in the wings, James looked out at that rope. On the east side, he saw black faces, young and old, dressed in their finest Saturday night outfits, already moving to the pre-show music that was playing over the speakers. On the west side, white faces, teenagers mostly, some looking nervous to be at a colored concert, others looking thrilled to be somewhere their parents probably wouldn't approve of, and between them that rope. James turned to Danny Ray, his longtime valet. "You see that rope, Danny? Hard to miss it, boss. You know what that rope represents?" Danny nodded slowly. "Everything wrong with this world." "Exactly." James was quiet for a moment, watching the divided crowd. "You got your scissors with you?" Danny's eyes went wide. "James, you can't be serious." The police chief himself said, "I asked if you got your scissors." Danny reached into his bag and pulled out a large pair of scissors he used for emergency repairs to James's costumes. "Boss, they'll arrest us. They'll shut down the show. They might do worse." James took the scissors and weighed them in his hand. Maybe we're about to show Birmingham something they've never seen before." He handed the scissors back to Danny. "Keep those handy when I give you the signal. You know what to do." At 8 p.m., the lights went down. The crowd erupted, both sides of the rope screaming with the same excitement, the same anticipation. James Brown hit the stage like lightning, launching immediately into Night Train. The band was tight, the horns were blazing, and the energy in that auditorium was electric. For the first 30 minutes, James played it straight. He performed all his hits. "Please, please, please, think, I got you." The crowd on both sides of the rope was going wild, dancing in their separate sections, singing along, having the time of their lives. But James kept looking at that rope, and every time he saw it, something burned inside him. 45 minutes into the show, during a brief break between songs, James did something unexpected. He walked to the front of the stage, right to the center where the rope barrier began, and he started talking. "Birmingham," he said into the microphone, his voice suddenly serious. "I want to ask y'all something." The crowd quieted down, curious. "Y'all having a good time tonight?" Both sides screamed yes, And you'll love this music. Yes, again, even louder. Then let me ask you this. James pointed to the rope. Why are you all dancing in two different places when you're listening to the same song? The auditorium went dead silent. Everyone knew exactly what he was talking about. And everyone knew this was dangerous territory. I'm gonna tell you something, James continued. Music doesn't know about that rope. Music doesn't care what color you are. When I'm up here singing, these notes, these rhythms, this soul, it belongs to all of us. Every single person in this room. He could see the security guards near the rope, looking nervous, hands on their radios, probably calling for instructions. He could see the venue manager stage left, making frantic hand gestures. Stop talking. Get back to the music. Don't do this. But James Brown had made his decision. So here's what we're gonna do tonight, he said, his voice strong and clear. We're gonna show Birmingham what it looks like when people come together. Danny Ray walked out from the wings, scissors in hand. Cut that rope. For maybe 3 seconds, nobody moved. The entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath. The security guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. The venue manager looked like he might pass out. And 6,000 people watched to see if this was really about to happen. Danny walked to the center stanchion and positioned his scissors on the rope. He looked back at James one more time. "Minds, are you sure?" James nodded. Danny cut the rope. The sound of the scissors going through that thick cord seemed impossibly loud in the silent auditorium. The rope fell to the floor in 2 pieces, the stanchion suddenly pointless without anything to hold up. And then chaos, but the good kind. A white teenage girl in a yellow dress was the first one to cross. She stepped over the fallen rope and walked onto what had been the black section of the dance floor. She stood there for a moment, as if testing whether the ground was different on this side. A black teenager boy, maybe 17, took 3 steps across the invisible line that had just been erased. He looked around, half expecting to be arrested. Then more people started moving, not rushing, not creating a stampede, but slowly, carefully. People from both sides began to mix. White teenagers crossing to dance next to black teenagers. Black families moving to spots where white families stood. The 2 separate crowds becoming one crowd. The security guards moved toward the fallen rope, but they didn't know what to do. Their orders had been to keep people on their side of the rope. But the rope was gone. Were they supposed to arrest everyone? All 6,000 people? James Brown, watching this unfold, counted to 10 in his head. Then he counted to 20. He wanted to give people time to mix, to cross, to see that nothing bad happened when human beings shared the same space. Then, at the perfect moment, he signaled to his band. The horns blasted back to life, and James launched into "I Got You, I Feel Good." The entire auditorium, all 6,000 people, now mixed together in one unified space, exploded in movement. People were dancing, black and white, young and old, all in the same space, moving to the same beat. Some people were crying while they danced. Some were laughing, but everyone was together. In the back of the venue, Chief of Police Jamie Moore stood with 6 officers watching. His hand was on his radio. One word from him, and this whole thing would end. He could shut down the concert, arrest James Brown, maybe arrest everyone in the building for violating segregation laws. But Moore was watching the crowd. He was seeing white kids and black kids dancing next to each other, not fighting, not causing trouble, just dancing. He was seeing something that Birmingham's power structure insisted was impossible, that people of different races could occupy the same space without chaos. Moore took his hand off his radio and turned to his officers. "We're leaving," he said quietly. "Sir?" one officer asked, confused. "The segregation law?" I said, "We're leaving. I'm not arresting 6,000 people for dancing." James Brown played for another 90 minutes that night. He played every song he knew, every hit, every B-side, giving that integrated crowd everything he had. And the crowd gave it right back, screaming, dancing, singing, celebrating not just the music, but the moment itself. When the show finally ended at 11:30 p.m., people left the auditorium quietly, almost reverently. They'd just experienced something that wasn't supposed to be possible in Birmingham, Alabama. For 3 hours that rope hadn't existed. For 3 hours the law hadn't mattered. For 3 hours they'd all just been people who loved music. Nobody was arrested that night. The venue didn't lose its license. And while the newspapers barely covered the concert, mentioning it only briefly in the entertainment section, the people who were there never forgot it. Years later, many of them would describe that night as the moment they realized segregation was built on a lie. The lie that people couldn't get along. The lie that mixing races would cause violence. The lie that separation was necessary. James Brown cut a rope that night. Just a piece of cord and some metal stanchions. But what he really cut was the illusion that segregation made sense. He showed 6,000 people that the barriers between them were artificial, arbitrary, and completely unnecessary. In a 1983 interview, 20 years after that Birmingham concert, a journalist asked James about the night he cut the rope. "Weren't you afraid?" the journalist asked. "Of being arrested? Of violence? Of what might happen?" James had smiled. "Of course I was afraid. But you know what I was more afraid of? Letting that rope stay up. Performing for a divided crowd and acting like that was normal. Using my music to entertain people while accepting a system that treated them as less than human." He'd paused, then added, "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is something simple. I didn't give a speech. I didn't organize a protest. I just cut a rope. But that rope represented everything that was wrong with the South. And when it fell, people saw that the only thing holding segregation together was their own acceptance of it. The Birmingham Municipal Auditorium doesn't exist anymore. It was demolished in the 1980s. But there's a historical marker on the site that mentions James Brown's performances there, including a brief reference to the night the barrier came down. Every year, a small group of people who were at that concert, or their children and grandchildren, gather at that marker. They share stories, play James Brown's music, and remember the night a soul singer showed them that freedom sometimes comes down to one simple act, refusing to accept the barriers that divide us. If this story of courage and unity moved you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that one person, one moment, one decision can challenge an entire system of injustice. Have you ever witnessed someone take a stand that changed how people saw the world? Share your story in the comments and hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible true story about the legends who used music to change history.